Welcome to the XY Advisor Podcast, a global community of financial advisors sharing and learning with one another to drive the positive evolution of financial advice. To get involved, go to xyadvisor.com or simply download the XY Advisor app.
This podcast is proudly brought to you by Challenger. At Challenger, we want to help you ensure that your retiree clients can meet their retirement needs today and tomorrow. To access thought leadership, insights, and tips on retirement planning for your clients, head on over to challenger.com.au/XY.
Welcome back to the XY Advisor Podcast. I'm Fraser Jack, and of course we are still talking about the changing landscape of retirement. So to go through a whole lot of data and stats on the topic, I'm joined by Jason Andresen from Core Data, the head of APAC. Welcome.
Thank you, Fraser. Pleasure to be here. Very excited to be talking about such an exciting topic.
I know you love your data analytics and getting into your insights and what comes from the data. So prepare to geek out with me on the subject.
Yeah, I love talking about retirement as well. Believe it or not. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, you do a lot of talking about retirement, don't you, with different super funds and all that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I spend most of my days talking about retirement or talking about financial advice. And I think in this instance, I'll be able to talk about both.
Feels like I've come to the right place. Let's kick it off. Let's start talking about the changing landscape of retirement. And obviously, there's a stack of moving parts to this conversation. But let's start with maybe the conversation around more than just money and what retirement means for retirees.
Yeah, thanks, Fraser. So this is a conversation I kick-started about 12 months ago out of frustration that certainly my background is financial planner and managing financial planners for a long time, saw the transformational impact of advice that was way more than just the money, but the conversation around retirement seemed to be all about adequacy and money in that context. So at Core Data, the clever people at Core Data embarked on this research that we call the best possible retirement research, and we did it 12 months ago. And I'm keen to share some of the findings from that. And we're in field at the moment, and with this year's study. And I've actually got some really fresh, like straight out of the field work insights to share today on that as well.
Fantastic. I love the concept of best possible retirement and it not being just about the money. But we see so often, the better position statement being all around the financial aspect. Yeah,
it is. The heuristic when it comes to money is fees and returns, right? And I get that they're easy to compare, but there's so much more to advice and there's so much more to retirement than those two things.
Hasn't fees become the topic of this decade?
Yeah, it has. And the precision that is expected of advisors with their research just blows my mind. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, it is pretty crazy. But how do we then take this the idea of there's more to it than just the money concept or happiness or living a life that you want to live or all those sorts of things, and quantify and qualify those things to then be able to put into your advice?
Yeah, so that is a great question, and we've done it. We have invented what we're calling the best possible retirement index. If you can think of another name, let me know, a better name. The best possible retirement index, to give a more holistic scoreboard of retirement confidence as people approach retirement and retirement satisfaction, and it's anchored in behavioural economics. So what we did, I'm a great fan. I'm sure that others are aware of the Harvard Men's Study that Harvard has been running for 75 or 80 years. It's called the Men's Study because it started out just following the lives of men. And a lot of these people are still alive, a good portion of them, 10 or 20%. It was actually a longitudinal study to try to understand course in life. So I don't have a time machine, so I can't do that. But we've tried to do something similar by replicating a longitudinal study. So we've asked identical questions of two different groups. People who are 45 and older, who have not yet retired. We called that the retirement expectations. And we asked almost the same questions of retirees. So people who identified as retired, and a good portion of them were over 75. And we called that the retirement outcomes survey. The idea behind that is what can the wisdom of the experienced retirees give to their younger selves, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. I always used to love that question. What tips would you give yourself if you could go back in time? This is essentially the very similar thing, asking what tips would you give to those people? Yeah,
absolutely. And so we've got lots of insights into what makes for a satisfying retirement. So much more than just a comfortable retirement, a satisfying retirement. And we've taken this perspective of if I feel good about my financial decisions, I'm more likely to take action and engage with my financial decisions, and I'll do good, and I'll and that will flow into the outcomes. So we took that framework and did a great big quant study and came up with the best possible retirement index score, which is a score from 0 to 100. It's normally distributed around a mean of about 50. It was a bit more than 50. It was 53. So 53 was the average score, just to be clear on that. And 0 is the worst possible situation a retiree can find themselves in. It's hell on earth. And 100 is absolute bliss. And obviously, most people fall between the 0. Everyone falls between the 0 and 100, but most people are not at those extremes. And that then gives us a good measure of the satisfaction people feel in retirement and what might be driving it.
Wow, I'm looking forward to these insights. Tell me, what is driving it?
So there's more than money at play. So when we plot the best possible retirement score against household wealth, we see that there is a very low correlation. There is a correlation. Money does matter, but it doesn't matter as much as we would think. And then when we plot wealth against the best possible retirement index score and look at the different cohorts, we can see that the richest retirees are the happiest and most satisfied. So the people with more than 1 million, and particularly if they've got more than 3 million, they're very satisfied. But the next most satisfied group of retirees actually have household wealth outside their family home of 350 to 550,000. So just to be clear, people with 350,000 to 550,000 are happier than every other cohort who is wealthier than them, right up until the $1 million cohort. And the next happiest group are the poorest group. People with 150,000 or less have significantly higher well-being, satisfaction with retirement, confidence in retirement than people who are wealthier with them. And the group that is the most miserable in retirement have between 550 and 750,000 of household wealth. Fraser,
there is so much in here, isn't there? There is just like, does that mean those people are, the expectations haven't been met in a lot of ways? I
think that's right. I think the expectations are at play, and I think that really explains why the people with less than 150 grand are so happy, because these people have never been rich. They've never had expectations of the ASFA retirement standard of whatever it is, 64 grand a year. They've never had that. And the age pension paid fortnightly is satisfying them clearly and giving them confidence that they can afford to live. And it's also important if they own their own home, but we'll talk about that in a sec. Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned the age pension there. That's a big part of this, isn't it? Because that then covers those lives of in that lowest group you talked about.
Yeah, and I think if you overlay the asset test thresholds, I think there's that at play as well. So there's a relativity, but that 350 to 550,000 group, they've kind of got the best of both worlds. Particularly if they own their own home, they've got some flexibility with the wealth that they have, and they've got the social security, the age pension coming in. But these people in the wealthier cohorts, particularly those between 750 and $1 million, they don't. And I think that is a major impact on them as well.
Yeah, I think it's amazing, isn't it, how much the pension means to retirees?
Yeah, it is. I think not to jump to the conclusion too early in this conversation, but I think that's because of the continuity of income. I think that is a major driver of retirement satisfaction. And if you can have confidence that you know that the next paycheck will be arriving in your account, then that makes a real difference.
Yeah, fantastic.
What also makes a difference, Fraser, is whether or not you feel in control of your retirement and control of the things that matter.
I'll come back to control in a second. You mentioned the home being a big impact. Can we talk through that?
Yeah. So we last year we tested home ownership against the best possible retirement index, and what became very clear is that when you own your own home, you have a much better retirement than if you're renting or if you still have a mortgage left to pay. So this rule of thumb that advisors have always had, that since I've been in financial services for 25 years, that it's good to reach retirement and extinguish your mortgage, absolutely pays benefits. So just the data on that, this best possible retirement score, where from 0 to 100, where the average is about 53. If a retiree is renting, they only have a score of 37. If they live in their home but they still have a mortgage left to pay, their score is 49.4, so still worse than average. And if they own their own home outright, it jumps right up to 62.8. So that is, I would say, the clearest driver of retirement satisfaction and happiness in retirement, whether or not you own your own home.
Well, it's incredible, isn't it? So it's got a lot to do with being having control and certainty, I guess, are the two things around that, owning your own home.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, you went into control, the conversation around control before. Let's dig into that. How does that make a big difference, and where are they getting it from?
Yeah, so the key drivers of retirement success are whether you own your own home. But when you unpack that, it's about a feeling of control, a feeling of certainty, a feeling of continuity, and the certainty that you can continue in the communities you're spending time with, that you've always spent time with. And the really sad fact is that, and this is fascinating and something that I didn't know until we did this study, but most people don't actually retire at a time of their choice. Their retirement date is forced on them, most people. Last year it was a bit over 50%. This year so far it's 56%, so it's even higher, probably with COVID. And people retire at the timing not of their choice for three reasons that are out of their control. Their own health issues force them into retirement. They have to care for a loved one is another major reason because of their health. And the third is simply they get the sack. They're forced into unemployment.
Yeah, that's a huge number, isn't it? Because we've always sort of said it's very hard to work out when you're going to retire, and people sort of put an arbitrary date on, and that sort of either becomes the date or whatever it might be. But that's a huge number. You know, nearly 6 in 10 people don't get to have that choice.
Yeah, and that point around it changes what financial advice is. I think financial planning advice. Financial planning, as we all know, commonly is you set a goal, you take a status check of where you are, and you create an action plan to bridge the gap. But only the same data shows that only 7% of people retire at the specific age they intended, Fraser. So what is the role of a financial advisor then? I think a large portion of the value of advice is helping people feel more in control. And just to get back to this best possible retirement index score, we then plotted the scores of people living in retirement who did retire for those for one of those three reasons out of their control, and they don't recover. Obviously, the health is a major driver of retirement satisfaction. So there's more at play than just being out of control with the health issue. But the score of people who are forced into retirement by health was just 42, so well behind the average. But it's not just that. So if I was forced into retirement because of unemployment, my score in retirement is still 45.8. So I don't recover. I don't recover emotionally, and I don't have this internal locus of control that I can control the things that are important. I can't control everything, but there are still levers that I can hold on to. People don't feel like that.
Yeah, you just mentioned the word lost or out of control or loss of control, and that is that, and not being able to recover from that, and emotionally. Yeah, I'm just trying that to emphasise, and it doesn't feel very nice, does it, to be out of control and not being able to recover?
Yeah, and so I think financial planners have a huge opportunity there to address that, because certainly you can't control things in your personal life, and unexpected things happen, but we can help people feel like they've got more financial resilience when bad things happen, and help people understand that they've got control of their expenditure, and that's a major that's a major thing. And when they spend and how much they spend, they can control how they invest, and they can even control against their biggest fear, which is running out of money in retirement. Right? There are solutions to that.
Yeah, exactly. Now, before we get into the biggest fear conversation, you mentioned also that part of staying in your own home was staying in the same community. And obviously community is a big part of, what's driving emotions in retirement.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. So there are three big drivers: certainty around income, so continuity of income, feeling of control, and the third big C is community. So very clearly being able to continue to be involved with the people I've always been involved with, the ability to be involved with the causes I've always been involved with is so important, which is kind of counterintuitive. But I used to be a financial planner living in Tamworth. I've lived in Tamworth twice in my career, and the number of people I saw retiring to the coast as if it was one spot, which always amused me. But they would retire to the coast, and 5 years later they'd come back, and they'd obviously done a lot of dough in transaction costs, because it turns out that retiring and leaving your community and the people you care most about and your family that you've spent years with and starting fresh isn't as satisfying as people might think, and they return home. Yeah.
Yeah, and so when it comes to community, it's all sorts of. I guess it's starting early, isn't it? That's not something that you start when you retire. You sort of want to have that moving through into retirement.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Yeah, so these people who start a hobby at retirement have got it wrong. They should be getting involved with their community, and from a young age, from 40, I'd say.
Yeah. And planners should be definitely taking that into consideration when it comes to what their goals are.
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic. Now, you mentioned the big problem of running out of money. What stats have you got on that? And is that something that a lot of people have, like, that's the big fear, I guess you could say?
It's the biggest fear that pre-retirees have. So the people in the run-up to retirement. So that, it's worth saying as well that with this best possible retirement research, what we found was that pre-retirees score on average worse than retirees when you're measuring how good they feel, how engaged they are with their money, and their confidence in their outcomes and expectations for the future. Pre-retirees are a lot more nervous and have less well-being and worry a lot more than retirees. So something strange happens at retirement. It's a time of turmoil, but after a period, which seems to be between 6 months and a couple of years, people settle in, and the people who retire successfully know where their money is coming from, and realise that they can control how much they spend, and recognise 85% of retirees can recognise the difference between their discretionary wants and their financial needs. And the same number, 85%, are willing to cut back when things go off track. And when they realise that they do have control of these things, they do have some age pension coming in, they've got some money coming in from their investments, and they realise they can still go to the pub and shout their mates 2 years old or VB or 4X, wherever you live, and still do the things they've always done with the people that are most important to them. It gives them real confidence in that.
So there's a big piece in this transition, isn't there? Because obviously you mentioned the what I took out to be anxiety of the pre-retirees. We haven't been there yet. It's unknown. We don't quite know how it's going to work out. There's still a space that's quite scary. And then that transition zone that you mentioned was 6 months to 2 years.
Seems to be, yeah. A period of transition, as you just mentioned, settling in. But that is an opportunity for further research, I would say, that what's happening in that era of transition.
Yep, fantastic. And so the fear factor then came out of it a little bit when it comes to those that had passed that retirement stage, and then they now knew what they were doing.
Yes, it is. It is clear, statistically significant, that pre-retirees worry about money and running out of money in retirement more than people living in retirement. Yeah, that fear dissipates.
Now, people living in retirement still have fears, but they tend to change from money to health.
Health, really. Yeah.
Yep.
It changes.
And how does health have a big impact on your study?
Well, retirees worry more about health than anything else, and as we've already talked about, health is a major driver of retirement satisfaction.
Yep. And talk to me about partners and genders and couples and how all this works.
Really
because
so this is where we went this year. This is the data that is super fresh. We're still in field actually, and we'll be in field for another month or so. But we decided to have a look at what the how relationships might impact on retirement happiness and retirement satisfaction. And what we have seen is that married people are far more financially resilient. They worry less about money, significantly less about money. This point of how they retire, the nature of their retirement, the differences between living situations, whether you're single, whether you're divorced or widowed, or whether you're living with your partner or married is extreme. So just as an example, the separated, divorced or widowed people, 40% of them are forced into retirement by health issues. So they've got less financial resilience compared to people who are married. That only half that proportion are forced into retirement through health. So obviously, the stability of having a partner helps from that situation. So this is a lot to unpack, right? Only 5% of people who are separated or divorced retire at their planned date, and they are feeling far more out of control than the people who are married.
Is that because it could have something to do with the just having somebody there with them to go through, feeling like they're a bit more alone going through this?
I think so. As I said, I'm looking forward to really analysing this. This is really fresh data, but I've got some figures here about how often people worry, and divorced people, 47% of them worry rarely. And that figure for married people is significantly higher. It's 65% of people who are married worry rarely. People who are divorced and separated, 40% of them worry either daily or weekly about money. And people who are married, it's half that, only 20% of them.
How do these stats compare with your figures that you did on the recently around COVID and people worrying about money over that period of time that are in the workforce?
It's a good question. So we did do a lot of that work. The reality is the initial fears of we've got the K-shaped economy happening. We have most people in Australia have fared, it turns out, through COVID very well. They were very worried early on that they wouldn't. They were saying they were personally impacted financially, but it turned out they were only personally financially impacted for a very short period of time. But we do have those people that are in those industries like the restaurants and travel industries that have been impacted. Their careers have been impacted, and frankly, could be years before they're back on track. And those people are obviously suffering real financial stress. So the unfortunate thing about statistics is averages lie. So the average I could give you would say that it is very similar, but there are some really miserable people out there.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. Very interesting. The K-shaped economy. That's one way to. I haven't heard that been spoken about before, so that's definitely one way to look at it.
Yeah. So you just have to have a look at the GDP figures by sector, and you can see there that there have been some sectors that have only mildly been impacted, some have been positively impacted, but the restaurants and the hospitality and the travel, they've been decimated, right?
Yep. Yep. So a lot of people that are retiring now or haven't had an opportunity, have had a long period of superannuation guarantee throughout their life. They've obviously had a fair amount of it, but not the full amount of time going through. How's that affecting it? How do you see this all shaping in the future as the superannuation guarantee becomes something that people have had all of their working life?
The clear message here is that, and this is heresy in the superannuation communities I spend time in, more super does not necessarily mean better outcomes, right? There's a major bit at play. It's something I haven't spoken about, and I need to, is the transformative impact of advice for retirees. So the retirees, the delta between a retiree who doesn't have an active relationship with a financial planner and the ones that do is chalk and cheese. I'll get you the figures in a moment. So what we see is that advice has this extraordinary transformative impact in the lives of retirees, and we measured it with the best possible retirement index. And what we saw is that retirees who don't have a relationship with a financial planner have worse retirement well-being than average, with a score of 48.8. But people who have an active relationship with a financial advisor score 64, which is just, that delta is just extraordinary and statistically significant. So the issue is that there's way more than money at play here. There's way more than super balance at play. So I think that super funds need to get their heads around the fact that there's more to a good retirement than the 9.5 or even 15% contributions. Obviously, the more the better for retirees, just as long as they don't pay for it today out of lost income. But it's not going to have the transformative impact on their lives that advice will have, or owning their own home, frankly.
Yeah. Can you talk to me about the different bands within the advice transformation impact? You know, you mentioned before that the bands of over 1 million are the happiest, and the 350 to 550, or they're the next happiest, whatever it might be. Talk to me about the how financial planning works in those bands, because we're kind of obviously seeing an affordability of financial advice issue as we're going down the track. We're sort of knowing that advice is costing a lot of money, so those with more money are getting advice. With your studies, were the people that are on 150 or less getting financial advice?
So no is the answer, but they're getting some well-being from other structures like the age pension. The reality is that unfortunately, financial advice is being priced out of the reach of people who need it most, and people who need it most are these people who are approaching retirement hesitantly or are feeling out of control as they approach retirement or are forced into retirement more importantly. This disconnect between what it costs advisors to provide advice and willingness to pay for advice, which I put down to anchoring in how much it costs to see other professionals in your life. You can get great medical care for a lot less than a financial plan cost, simply because a financial planner has to spend so long meeting their clients' needs and substantiating their advice because of the regulatory environment. But I don't want to get too controversial. The fact is, advice is worth every cent if clients can just understand the value of advice. And the value of advice is way more than better returns and lower fees in the products you recommend. The well-being aspects of the advice, and we know that people who seek advice have better overall well-being. They have better mental well-being. They have better physical well-being. They drink less. They sleep more. They've got better relationships. They're less likely to be involved in a violent relationship. It's better for families when people access advice. The challenge is reducing the cost to deliver advice and helping the value of advice become more tangible, I think.
Yeah, this is really amazing stuff, isn't it? I'm just writing this down as we go. You know, the mental, physical, relationships, families. And by the way, you'll be financially better off as well.
Yeah. So this argument of I can't afford advice, I do get that starting point because how people are anchored, but helping clients understand that advice is worth every cent. But having said that, it does matter how much advice costs. So the financial planning industry needs to innovate and actively work towards reducing cost base with efficiency, as every other industry needs to do.
Yeah, you mentioned the medical industry before. It's kind of I think everybody's used to having 15-minute consultations and going get in and out, and if not paying very much money, it's subsidised by the government. The government's paying the money, or the rest of the taxpayers, I should say, are paying. But they do understand the doctor's getting paid, but just it's very short and sharp, isn't it? 15-minute intervals.
I think just a personal anecdote, just very quickly. I had oral surgery. I had some teeth extracted, my wisdom teeth extracted. I'm the world's oldest person to do that.
You finally got wise, so they took your wisdom teeth out.
Yeah. I had an oral surgeon. I had an anaesthetist. I had theatre nurses. I had nurses afterwards to care for me, and it all cost less than what a financial planner charges. And that is because the only paperwork was the invoice. That's what I believe. And we've done these studies, right, in conjunction with the FPA over years and years of how long it takes to produce a statement of advice, and still it takes more than between 10 and 20 hours to produce a statement of advice, and that's what's killing us.
Yes, but the feeling was the same. Statement of advice still feels like pulling teeth. Sorry, I couldn't resist. Had to throw that one in there. So tell me about this study. Like this, as you said, you're a couple of years into the study. When are you planning on publishing some of these results or getting them out and about?
Well, with your good self, we have started the process, which is really exciting. Yeah, so we are partnering with a number of super funds on this study. So we're going to end up with a great big sample, kind of multiples of last year's, and we'll be out of field work in mid-April actually, and then the real work begins, because that's when we do our statistical analysis, and that's where you draw out your insights. And looking forward to sharing the findings and starting a new conversation, a better conversation about retirement and retirement adequacy, and everyone needs more super.
Yeah, exactly right. And so that'll come out in the next few months. So keep an eye out for all those things. Talk to me about the the age groups that you were in this study, those people that are then now in the later years of their life. So not just they've just started out in retirement, but they're in the later years of their life.
Yeah, so we work really hard at that. So retirement is an amazing thing. Like the design of this study, we decided actually it was a mindset rather than an age. So we even had strange, sounds judgmental, it probably is. We had respondents who were 70 years old and have been unemployed for 5 years. It's that issue of not getting their heads around it, and I'm still in the game, and I'm not actually retired. I'm unemployed. But so it was a mindset. The only age cutoffs we had were 45. So we wanted mature people who were not distracted with other areas of life, people who are turning their minds to retirement. So 45-year-olds to as old as people could be who consider themselves still working, and a group of retirees who consider themselves retired. And a good portion of those were over 75. Yeah.
Yeah, you asked us before about coming up with a name for your index, but if we had to rename retirement, obviously there's a CISAC requirement around when you can and can't access things. But apart from that, a mindset. Where are we going with that? Does it have to be called retirement?
I don't think it does. Yeah, it's a very in 100 years, retirement will be considered this strange period of time, kind of like landline phones. That were there for a window, 100 years ago, the life expectancy of an Australian male was 58 or something, 56. There was no such thing as retirement, and there's a good chance that there's no such thing as retirement moving forward. Right? People are still looking to contribute into very old age. So I think this whole idea of retirement could very well be have been invented in the 1980s and may be dead pretty soon.
Oh, well, let's be the instigators of it. Getting rid of the word, getting rid of retirement. It's funny, isn't it, how these things come in and they just stick around, and because that's the way we always used to talk about it, but it doesn't actually make sense for the next generation coming through.
No, it doesn't. I agree.
Well, fantastic. So if somebody wants to continue this conversation, what's the best way sort of for them to get hold of you?
Link me in on LinkedIn. Follow me on LinkedIn. I am regularly publishing really interesting stuff. So please link me in.
You are. I do read it and think, gee, that's interesting. That makes a good topic of conversation. So we'll probably have you back on, I would imagine, fairly soon.
Good. Thanks, Fraser. Loved it.
Thank you, Jace. Well, there you have it, another episode of the XY Advisor podcast. I'm Fraser Jack, and I'm joined by Emily. Yay!
Yay! Yes, you are. Our favourite time of the week.
It is. It's time to do a really cool shout-out to an XY member.
Yes, today's shout-out goes to Huria Kadazi. We're calling her Helpful Huria. She is our top contributor for the week, and I know Huria has been doing a lot of work in her FASA exam workshops and her other training courses and programs that she runs and facilitates on XY. She is in there every single day, answering questions, being as responsive as she can, and just really trying to help advisors level up in their FASA exam prep, but also just general education questions as well. She's just a lovely person, and she truly, embodies the XY community spirit. So definitely worth a big shout out. You're doing amazing stuff, Huria. Keep up the good work, legend.